We will get things started here and let folks join us. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the meeting of Rotary Club of Seattle number 4. Reminder that we are named for being the 4th oldest club in the world and the largest in our region. I'm your club president, Beth Knox. As we convene today, I would like to begin by acknowledging the indigenous peoples of all the lands that we are on today. While we meet today on a virtual platform, I'd like to also take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the lands which we call home. So welcome to the 4th Wednesday of the month, where we gather exclusively online. Today is also the last day of November, a month in which we celebrate the culture, traditions, and contributions of Native American people. As an intentional and inclusive club, I wanted to continue offering up information that deepens our understanding of our ancestors. Now, November is also the month in which we honor our veterans. So I was especially intrigued when club member Faith Ireland shared details of a book called Code Talkers. This is the first and only memoir written by one of the original Navajo code talkers of World War II. Although more than 400 Navajos serving in the military during World War II as top secret code talkers, even those fighting shoulder to shoulder with them were not told of their covert function. And after the war, the Navajos were forbidden to speak of their service until 1968, when the code was finally declassified. Of the original 29 Navajo code talkers, only 2 are still alive. The author of the Code Talkers book, Chester Nez, is one of them. And in this memoir, the 89-year-old chronicles both his war years and his life growing up on the checkerboard area of the Navajo reservation, and the hard life that gave him the strength, both physical and mental, to become a Marine. His story puts a living face on the legendary men who developed what is still the only unbroken code in modern warfare. Now, nobody tell my husband Jim, but this book is going to be in his Christmas stocking this year. And now I'd like to welcome club member Bill Center to share our inspiration of the day. Bill?
Thanks, President Beth, and thanks for that reminder of the Code Talkers. They did really heroic service, and I'm glad that they're getting more attention. I'm not sure if it's the short days and long cold nights, a looming big number birthday, or the passing of so many good friends in recent months, but something set me to compiling a list of regrets. I ended up with a pretty conventional list. I regret not having been nicer, kinder, more tolerant, understanding, and forgiving. I wish I'd spent more quality time with family and friends. I regret not talking less and listening more. At some point, it occurred to me, everything on my list was the product of poor choices made and bad habits allowed to fester. I was about to add that to the list when I suddenly realized it's not too late to make some changes. I know from experience, it only takes 30 days to replace a bad habit with a good one. And making better choices might result from listening more and thinking longer before speaking and rushing to judgment. It would be very satisfying to discover at journey's end, the only serious regret still on the list was that I didn't try harder to do better until so late in the game. I resolved not to wait until January 1st to launch that effort. Then I thought, this is going to be hard. Momentarily disheartened, it occurred to me, during my life, I spent a lot more time and effort trying to modify the behavior of others than working to transform my own. So I added that to the regrets list, all of which led me to the well-known Serenity Prayer, attributed to Lutheran theologian Reinhold Niebuhr. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, and the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate you getting us in the spirit for today's meeting. I'd like to also thank Pete Delane for serving as our meeting reporter today. And I just want to point out, it is not an insignificant job to capture a summary of our program and speakers each week. And I'm grateful for the commitment by Pete and his entire committee who do this week after week. Now, to introduce our guests who have joined us online today is Seattle 4's Membership and Communications Manager, Mary Goldie. Mary?
Hi, everyone. We have a number of guests today, including some past district governors and people that have been involved on the district level at Rotary, including John Anger, Dwayne Rudd, and JJ Gardner. We also have Jorge Chapa, who recently filled out a membership application. He also attended a recent meeting at the Rainier Club, so we're really happy to have him with us today as well. And also Dr. Kayani Velagapeldi, guest of Paul Suzman. So thank you all so much, and thanks for attending the meeting today.
All right, thank you, Mary. We're going to jump right into our short program today, and I'd like to introduce our speaker, James Amadon. James is the Executive Director of Circlewood, and also the Executive Producer of the Earth Keepers podcast, and an editor and weekly writer at the Ecological Disciple. He has a BA from Gordon College, a Masters of Divinity from North Park University, and a Doctorate of Ministry from Duke Divinity School. His work centers on helping people in positions of leadership figure out how to lead people and organizations into a more sustainable way of life. He has lived in the Pacific Northwest for 20 years and recently moved to Camano Island with his wife, Emily, and their 3 children. James?
All right, thank you, Beth, and thank you everybody for having me. It's really a privilege to be with you today and a privilege to share a little bit about what I do with the work of Circlewood. So I'm going to go ahead and share the screen. Just give me 1 sec. All right, can somebody give me a thumbs up if they can see that? Okay.
You're good. You're good.
Good to go. Okay. Well, Circlewood is a nonprofit dedicated to accelerating the greening of faith. We're rooted in the Christian tradition, but we are more than that. We run programs and things for people of goodwill who care about being better stewards of the environment. So while we're have a faith-based root, we work with all people who care about the world that we live in and making it a better place. We go about it through 3 ways. Global media, we have a podcast, an online journal, and have discovered that's a way to meet partners around the world, even as our work focuses mostly on the Pacific Northwest. We run different programs of immersive education, getting people out in nature and helping them understand the world a little bit better than we do and figuring out how to care for it better. And what I want to share a little bit more in detail about is our major project, which is Circlewood Village, a 40-acre learning center that we are developing on Camano Island, which is part of the reason, or the major reason, I now live there. One of the reasons we are doing this big project on Camano Island is because the world is in such a state ecologically, environmentally, that the problems can feel really overwhelming. It can be discouraging. It can feel polarizing, all of those kind of things. And we figured we needed a place of hope, a place where people can come and see a different way of life, a way that's being designed differently from the ground up, a place where people can come and explore innovative ideas and develop them together, and a place of collaboration where people can honestly come together and develop ideas, their own projects, in all walks of life, all kinds of endeavors, businesses, churches, all of that, to have a place where that's fostered in a really creative way. So this is a picture of our architectural design of Circlewood Village on Camano Island, where the specific mission and purpose of the village will be to accelerate the greening of humanity. And that's basically recognizing that we all need to move towards a more sustainable way of life that can come in thousands of different forms, and that we need places like Circlewood Village to help foster that. The village is will be set within 40 acres of beautiful forest land on Camino Island. I'd never been to Camino before accepting this position and have found it to be an incredible place within the Pacific Northwest and a wonderful place for my family to live. The first thing we've been doing is learning how to care for a 40-acre forest. And we found partners through the Northwest Natural Resources Group to help us develop a 30-year conservation plan. And that helps us make sure that our forest is not only going to maintain its health as we do our work, but also improve it and be a place where people come and learn just by simply being in a healthy forest. As we've developed this, we've put together a world-class design team of people who are rooted here in the Pacific Northwest, from our David Vandervoort, who's a green architect based out of Seattle, to 2020 Engineering in Bellingham. These are people who have years of experience kind of pushing the boundaries of design and development work. Our project manager is Ray Colliver, who was the project manager for Quest Stadium. So we have lots of people with expertise really pushing the boundaries of what's possible as we build this thing from the ground up. And as we design it, and the village will be set within 10 acres of the 40 acres, and we'll have the capacity to have about 40 to 60 people stay overnight, as well as bigger groups for shorter periods of time. But the design has been accepted as a project of the Living Building Challenge, which is rooted here in Seattle. It is the world's most rigorous standard for this kind of building. And it's pushing us to develop something where when you come to the village, even the way it's designed and built will be part of the learning experience. So here's a couple of pictures of what we are designing it towards. This is the first building that we'll be completing come in the new year. It'll have a space for classrooms and gatherings, outdoor meeting space. And that will be just the first of what will be a multi-building kind of site. This gives you a picture of what it will look like as you come into the main center circle. After all, we're called Circlewood, so we've designed the main area in a circle with some classroom buildings and a dining room and an outdoor amphitheater. Here's a view of what it will look like from inside what we call the nest, the very center of the village. A place that's seamlessly integrated into the forest, a place where you can come and gather with your friends and colleagues and your classmates if you're taking a course, and just feel at home in the natural environment. This is how we imagine the inside of our dining room, our commons area, what we call the commons building, a place for students and people perhaps like yourselves to come and eat good, healthy food. There'll be a teaching kitchen in there. We'll be growing plants and things like that, all with these big window pictures looking out over the forest. And if you get to stay overnight, our architect is designing these state-of-the-art cabins. We'll have 3 different village areas kind of within the larger village where people can stay for longer periods of time. So what we're imagining in terms of how this will be used is to have short workshops happening, weekend events, week-long courses, and longer-term residential programs for people pursuing certificates and potentially degrees, but things that will be accessible to everybody at different levels. I think I missed, there was a slide in here that I think got left out. Wanted to just tell you a little bit, I'll go back to this and just say, what is it we'll be focusing on here? And I think what we found is our strength and a need is 3 things. First, we need a place to come and learn practical earthkeeping skills. How do each of us help care for our world in very practical ways? So we'll have courses and things on that. The second is innovation hubs. So we're imagining people from all different kind of fields, leaders in their fields, whether that's business, nonprofit work, or the religious sector, coming out together to say, how do we make our work a little bit greener? How can we work together and innovate and come up with new solutions for the way we should live together? And the third part, which is related to that, is what we call ecological leadership. As we understand our world to be interconnected and interdependent, how do we as leaders in whatever field that might be, whether it's your home, your business, or your community, how do we lead with that sense of interconnection in ways that foster greater health in our communities and in our world? So I just wanted to leave you with one question, and I'd be happy to take this up in the chat or over my email there, is how might you accelerate the greening of your world? In your spheres of influence, your homes, your businesses, your communities, I think it's important for us each to ask how we might be doing that in our own way. So thank you for having me. It's really fun to share the vision and see what's developing out here. And I hope at some point you'll all get a chance to come visit us on Camano Island.
All right. Thank you, James. We appreciate the great work that you're doing at Circlewood and helping to make an impact on what we all know is a global crisis in climate change. And I will just add that I sit on the board of directors for Circlewood. So if anyone has any follow-up questions after the fact, feel free to reach out to me and I can connect you with James. All right, now we're going to move into our main program. And after we hear from our speaker, we will, as usual, open up the virtual floor for questions. So put your questions into the chat bar, and Jen Gladish is going to monitor the chat, and we'll share those questions out with our speaker. Now, I'd like to introduce our speaker. Cassie Sauer is President and Chief Executive Officer of the Washington State Hospital Association. WSHA represents all the hospitals in Washington State and works to improve the delivery, quality, accessibility, and affordability of healthcare. Cassie is going to discuss the current challenges facing hospitals, which we know are experiencing a capacity crunch related to delayed care, an intense respiratory season, and difficulty finding places for patients leaving the hospital so that they have a place to go. Hospitals are also struggling financially, and she's going to share solutions to those challenges, largely centered on the 2023 state legislative session. Hospitals would greatly appreciate the support of Rotary members for these solutions. So we're going to let Cassie share more. Cassie, welcome.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Very nice to be with you. I really appreciate the invitation. As Beth just described, this is not a great time for hospitals in our state. And I do have some slides to share, but the capacity challenges, the financial challenges, and the demand for care are rather overwhelming. And I'd be curious if any of you has, either you or someone you know or your kids have sought hospital care in the last month or so, maybe even the last couple of weeks, how the experience has been. Maybe you could write it in the chat. My guess is it's probably not been great. It's really hard to get care. I have had a kid with influenza and another kid with concussion, and this is my job all the time, and I've really struggled to get care for them. So I think it's something that's happening all around the state. So I'm going to share my screen, and I'm thinking I'm going to share my screen. That the thing I want to share is not there. Hang on a second. We practiced this earlier and now it's disappeared. There it is, disappeared. Okay, great. Sorry about that. Okay, there we go. Can you see that? Yeah, great, thank you. Okay. All right, so really my theme here today is the aftermath is worse than the hurricane. And as you all know, we've been through a COVID hurricane over the last couple of years. We're actually really proud of the work that we were able to do in COVID. Anybody want to take a guess about Washington's per capita death rate, where we fall in ranking of the 50 states? Remember, keep in mind that we were the state that was surprised by COVID. We all thought COVID was going to stay in China, and then it came here, and then we got overwhelmed by it. So I'd just love to have a couple people just guess where are we in the national ranking of death per capita?
I would think maybe one of the lower states per capita for deaths, because it seems like the COVID, people cared a lot more about, taking precautions here than in other states I lived during the pandemic.
Yep. We are the 4th lowest in the country. And the other states that beat us are like Hawaii, which has an ocean, and Vermont, which is very small and rural. And a big certainly a big part of it was the seriousness that our public took COVID, but another big piece of it was the cooperation among hospitals. We're the only state in the country that had a written agreement among all the hospitals that no individual hospital would become overwhelmed, that we would move patients, ventilators, medications, PPE all around the state to make sure that no matter which door of what hospital you walk through, you would have the best chance of survival. So our post arriving at the hospital survival rate is actually quite a lot better than many other states. So we have been through this hurricane, and now we kept thinking, oh, hooray, you know, things are getting a lot better, and they're actually getting worse. So I want to talk about what's happening. So right now, hospital capacity is terrible. We have, for a number of factors, RSV is a pediatric respiratory disease that is causing a huge crunch in pediatric care. Our pediatric hospitals are very, very overwhelmed. But typically this is part of the issue is we didn't get sick for 2 years, and so everybody's getting really sick. So you're kind of catching up with no immunity. The flu season is early and bad. The chart on the slide is from the Centers for Disease Control, and the black line with the little red triangles is this season's flu season, and the other lines are prior years. You can see that our flu is very early and it's spiking quickly. I was really surprised by my kid having the influenza A in mid-November. That's usually when we get our flu shots, because the same day we were scheduled to get flu shots, he got diagnosed with the flu. That's usually a really good time to get a flu shot because the flu doesn't hit before then. Lots of people have delayed care. We have had people who didn't get care in the pandemic who are a lot sicker. And so people who need hospital care are typically in worse shape than they would have been in prior years, like more advanced cancers, for example. Patients are stuck in hospitals, patients who have completed their acute care. They came to the hospital for, you go to the hospital because you need surgery, you had a heart attack, you have a stroke, you got a car wreck, you get treated for your acute sick illnesses or injuries, and then you either go home or you go someplace else to rehab. But we've got more and more patients who go through that acute phase and they can't get out, they can't leave, there's no place for them to go. And then not enough staff. And our staffing actually is quite steady. We have about the same number of hospital staff as we did before the pandemic. What's up is the demand. So we don't have the staff to meet the demand and the complexity of patients that we're seeing. My slide won't advance. There it goes. Okay, this is hospital occupancy in Western Washington. You don't want hospitals to be this full. 94% full is every day people are coming and going from the hospital. You need to have some space that people can come if something goes wrong. You know, if there's like there's probably folks who have frostbite this morning who slept outside last night, who need to be seen at the hospital, for example, or the wrecks that were happening on I-90, people need to be able to get into the hospital. So this is not a good place to be, to have 94% occupancy. And about 10 to 20% of hospital patients across the state are ready for discharge and they're stuck, and they're often there for months and sometimes even years. This is ICU occupancy, similar story. You do not want ICUs to be 90% occupied. You need to have some flex, especially heading into a winter respiratory virus season. So one of the questions we get asked a lot is, why are people stuck in the hospital? That sort of is a thing that doesn't really make sense. And I want to just remind you all that hospital resources are expensive and they're very limited. We are the second lowest state in the country for the number of hospital beds per capita. So we don't have excess hospital capacity. So what I'm going to give you some definitions. Difficult to discharge are patients that don't need that acute level of hospital level of care, but they're unable to leave the hospital because of a variety of barriers. And what post-acute care means is things like nursing homes, rehab hospitals, skilled nursing facilities. I should have put adult family homes, which are a really important part of the puzzle here, or home health. And some of the reasons for this is that our state pays very low. Many of these patients are public patients. They're covered through DSHS or Medicaid. And the payment rates from our state are very low for post-acute care. And so it's hard, they just can't afford, the nursing homes simply can't afford to take patients that are complex. There's not an incentive to move patients on the insurer side. The way that the hospitals get paid is they get paid for the diagnosis. So if you have a heart attack, you get paid, this patient with a heart attack, you get paid a certain amount for the bundled care for heart attack. Once that's over, you either get paid zero or very much lower than the post-acute care rate. So the incentives are not correct here to get people out of the hospital. There are serious workforce issues in post-acute care settings. Those are hard jobs. They got a lot harder in the pandemic, and they don't pay well. And so challenges getting enough staff to work there. And then we're seeing, I mean, I think probably all of you experience this just walking around Seattle, people with increasingly complex problems, with mental health issues, substance abuse issues, dementia. Those folks are really hard to place. They're scary. They can be scary for the post-acute care settings to take on. Even from a regulatory point of view, they're likely to cause something is more likely to go wrong the more complex the patient is, and the regulatory environment is pretty harsh. And so the chance of getting in trouble for doing something is worse. So that's the capacity issues. The financial issues are also bad. And the financial issues, many of you who run businesses can, I'm sure, relate to this, which is that costs are going up way faster than revenues. Hospitals, however, don't have the ability to raise prices in most cases, especially because the bulk of hospital payments come from government sources, Medicaid, Medicaid covers younger people, pregnant women, people who are lower income, up to age 65, and Medicare, which covers people who are over 65, both of which don't pay very well. They pay less than it costs to care for people. And so those payments are fixed, and supply costs have gone up tremendously. Supply costs include labor costs, which I'm sure all of you are experiencing, pharmaceutical costs, energy costs, things like the personal protective equipment, masks that used to cost 5 cents now a piece now cost $0.25 a piece, which when you're buying them in hundreds of thousands of volumes makes a big difference. So this is the state of Washington's hospitals financials, comparing the 6 months ending June 30th, 2022 and 2021. And I'll be clear that 2021 was not a great year. We had lots of COVID, and it was quite overwhelming, and COVID was very expensive care because you need all that supply, that equipment. But if you see, I'm gonna just go down to this details the various pieces, but the most important thing to look at is the total operating expenses going up 11%. And revenue did go up, but it went up 4%. And so you've got a big variation. And so the hospitals have lost more than $1 billion in Washington State in the first 6 months of 2022. So I did say I didn't want to be just admire the problem and here's all the bad things that are happening, but actually bring some ideas that we are working on to help fix this. We think that hospital care is essential in Washington State. People do need their hospitals to be there and to be functioning. I think all of us would like to not need the hospital, I guess, unless you're joyfully having a baby. But other than that, it's someplace that people don't like to think about needing to go, but we do want it to be there and expect it to be there if we need it. So the things that we are looking at first is a proposal to increase Medicaid hospital payments. There are new options for increased federal funding to hospitals. This would not require a tax on Washingtonians or a tax on insurers in Washington State, but instead is a way for the federal government to invest more in the quality of Medicaid care. And so we are interested in pursuing that in partnership with our legislature, and hopeful that this will be something that can be successful this year. The next piece is to invest in a long-term care system capacity. So this is increasing the payment rates for those complex patients that need to go to nursing homes or skilled rehab or adult family homes, for example, really paying for what the care is that these folks need who are really complex. The other piece about this that's worth knowing is a hospital is not a good place to be for months. And I say this as someone who likes hospitals a lot, but it's, you don't get to leave your room. You don't get to go outside. You don't get to communicate with others. So it's a really big deal. We want to oppose hospital staffing mandates. Last year, the legislature contemplated a bill that would have limited the number of patients any nurse could take care of. This might sound like an appealing piece of legislation on its face. However, it would mean significant cuts in the availability of hospital care in Washington State. And it treats both patients and staff like widgets when different patients, two patients having a knee replacement one of whom is mentally healthy and has done all their prep work and has family there to support them. Another of whom is struggling with a mental illness, has no family, and did not, has an underlying infection. Those are really different people in care of a patient. And then finally, we are pursuing a proactive nurse staffing legislative package. We agree we would definitely like there to be more nurses in our state. So investing in things like education, allowing for quicker licensure when people come here from other states, are things that we are working on in our proactive nurse staffing legislative package. And we would love to have the support of the Rotary and Rotary members for all of these pieces. And that's my presentation. I'm happy to take questions or discussion. Thank you for your attention.
That's really great, Cassie. Thank you so much. We have some really great questions in the comments, and I know that I really appreciate myself understanding a little bit more about some of the things that go on that we don't see. You asked to begin with about anybody having any hospitalizations in the last month, and while I didn't, I had 3 children that ended up near needing to go to, I don't know if it was RSV or the flu, but it really seems to be taking people down. So thank you so much for the work that you're doing.
It's scary as a parent, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I have to get to work.
Yeah.
And they need to be safe too. Everybody here needs to be healthy. So,
yeah.
Okay, Dorothy has a question about if there is a plan to address the loss of nurses and if there will be a new role for PAs in this area. And I'm wondering if the nurse staffing legislative package that you have addresses some of that too.
Yeah, I think retention is a big piece for us. And one of the things that we've heard from nurses is something that would help keep them in the workplace is more loan forgiveness for having gone to school as nurses. And so we are interested in expansion of the programs that do loan forgiveness. Right now, you have to be in a health shortage area, which are pretty limited. But we would like for those nurses to be able to qualify for that, whether they're working at Harborview or Swedish or wherever, just as long, they're working in a hospital and really dedicated to that career. So that's a big piece of it. The other piece has been our hospitals are voluntarily focusing a lot on trauma recovery. And it's been a traumatic 2 years to work in a hospital. Just as one indicator, in intensive care units, the death rate is usually about 5 to 7% of intensive care patients die. And during the peaks of COVID, it was more like 35 or 40%. So if you're working there, you're having patients die all the time, and they're dying gruesome deaths. Honestly, they are essentially, it's like almost like you're drowning, and they couldn't be around their families. Their families couldn't be with them. So the nurse is dealing with the trauma of the patient death, the trauma and anger of the family. Very, very challenging. And so there's a lot of work happening to help support the resilience and mental health of nurses who've been through a ton.
That's really great. That David actually asked a question that you're partially addressing in this about some more of the deleterious impacts that these things have on the staffing there. Can you maybe elaborate on some of the creative programs or anything that's being developed to address these issues?
Yeah. A lot of hospitals have made telehealth mental health services available to anyone with no limits. That's been an important piece. There are places that are doing support groups for their staff so they can talk to each other about what they've gone through. Thinking about, there's folks that are doing mindfulness kinds of classes for staff, which can really help to get people to feel more centered. I think just really acknowledging the grief, we are able to suspend grief for some time, but then when the grief, when you sort of get through the episode, I think the grief can wash over like a wave. And I think that's what a lot of staff are experiencing right now. And so trying to put those kind of grief and loss supports in place for staff has been really important.
That's great to hear that there's work being done on those fronts. Bill Center, who provided our great inspiration today, is wondering if there is a statewide effort to pay qualified nursing teachers at least as well as we pay those who work as nurses, is the way he put it. And I would love to hear about that.
Yeah, we have been working on this for several years, trying to increase the pay to nursing faculty, and have had some success in doing so. There is an objection from some of the other faculty in colleges and the faculty unions to differentiate pay between different types of instructors. But you can make a lot more money working in a hospital, especially if you're in any kind of management position, than you can teaching nursing. The other piece that we're looking at is, do you really have to have a master's degree to teach nursing? If you've been, for example, an ER nurse for 20 years and you don't have a master's degree, you are very well qualified to teach people how to be a nurse. But our state requires a master's degree for teaching nursing, and we'd like to see that changed as well.
Very interesting. Is that, how does that differ from other states?
Other states don't require, some states do and some states don't. There are states that don't require master's degrees for teaching. One of the issues is also the accrediting bodies for the colleges, and some of them are requiring master's degrees. And we actually recently heard that one of the major accrediting bodies for nursing schools is contemplating requiring PhDs for nurse educators, which we are wildly opposed to, because then it means you just can't find anybody to teach.
Wow. Okay. And Jevin has a question about maybe looking at increasing and decreasing capacity on a cyclical basis to make sure that we're staffing up for things like RSV and flu season. Is that something that's already done, or is that something that's looking to be?
Yeah, it is already done. And also it can be hard to anticipate. Like I showed that flu chart. People did not think the flu would come this early and that fast. As I said, I work in this field all the time. I hadn't gotten my own or my children's flu shots before my kid got the flu, and I felt like, oh boy, I probably shouldn't admit this publicly, but here I am admitting it. I think people knew this winter would potentially be bad. Actually, last year, remember, people thought that last winter was going to be terrible with the flu and RSV, and it wasn't. So everything is conjecture, honestly, and you try to predict the best you can. But this year we're being hit harder than we anticipated, for sure.
Yeah.
But yes, that does happen. I mean, there is some cyclical nature to it. There's also the summer is called the trauma season. People drown and fall out of windows, and they fall off their bikes, and they bang their heads on their kayaks and get in boat wrecks. Like there are other parts of the year where people also have bad things happen. So it's not just the winter.
Fireworks.
Yeah, exactly. Don't shoot off fireworks. Every year Harborview has like 50 people with hand injuries at fireworks, or some big number. Just let the professionals do it. Stay off ladders too.
Okay, sorry to be hopping around a little bit, but we have some really great questions coming in. Dorothy asked a question that you already addressed, but not in specific to immigration. So she's wondering if there's a plan to relax certification requirements specifically for immigrant doctors and nurses.
Yes, we are partnering with the American Hospital Association on this work. These are federal laws around immigration. And this gets tied up into very, very hot topics about how open the border is and whether people should be able to come here from other states. It gets very quickly political, but it definitely got worse during the pandemic. We have in the past had better ability to have folks come from other countries. There was so much fear about people coming from other countries and bringing COVID that those immigration, the processing of potential immigrant staff went way down, and we are hopeful it's going to get better.
That's great. And do you have specific, or not you specifically, but are there specific training in places for the hospital staff as far as DEI and such with, both patients and doctors and nurses as they immigrate?
Yeah, and that's an important piece too, is giving people, well, it's very helpful actually to have folks who are immigrants as providers, because there are a lot of immigrants who are patients. And so having someone treat you who understands your culture and can speak your language can be really, really helpful. I have a friend who is a medical interpreter who was born in Mexico, and when you say you are congested in your nose, you say you're constipado in your nose, and the doctor the translator, he was not the translator, a different translator translated that and said he's constipated, and they gave him laxatives, and he came back the next time and they said, how are you? And he said, I'm still stopped up, and I also have diarrhea. So you need to, having someone who actually can speak your language can be very helpful. And so there's a lot about the DEI work for patients that trying to have a culturally appropriate caregivers is really helpful. But we also need to support those folks once they get here. They have a way to connect with community and feel welcome in the community. And hopefully, it often can work well if you've got several people from the same country arriving in the same hospital, or where there already are people from that country, to help welcome them and not have them feel like they're on an island.
Yeah. Do hospitals in this area specifically often sponsor visas so that we have adequate staffing?
Yeah.
And what is
Well, it was different before the pandemic, and we're hoping it gets better again. It's been a lot more challenging to get people through the federal visa system.
Yeah, I've noticed that with a few different things. I think I use au pairs as a way of childcare because Seattle's so expensive, and you could hardly get an au pair in the country for a long time with their screening. So hopefully we see that pick up again with hospital staffing.
I think that's true for tech companies as well. I'm sure quite a few of you are with tech companies, and I bet you've experienced the same thing trying to get people to be able to work in the States. It's been a lot harder in the last 2 years. It seems to maybe be moving in a better direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Karma has a question. Would it help to focus on increasing the number of LPNs? And if we were to increase the number of LPNs, what would be an effective way to do that? Is it with education, resources?
Yeah, there are definitely ways to expand the care team with licensed LPNs or licensed practical nurses, medical assistants, which are also called MAs, CNAs or certified nursing assistants. There's a variety of licensure categories our state has that can be supportive of nurses. The licensure process in our state is actually fairly slow. They were struggling to find folks who could do the exams in COVID. Some of these exams are required in person, and to find the space, so that there's folks who were recruited to be in these positions and went through the training and then couldn't get through the state licensure and so dropped. And so that's been an area of focus for us. Is if you've got someone who wants to do this work and has gone through the process, we need to be able to get them certified and into working as fast as possible. Some of this is more and more hospitals and nursing homes are thinking about doing their own on-the-job training, creating their own, for example, MA or CNA training programs, just to help expedite the process. And it also increases loyalty to the organization. You know, if you went through your CNA training at Multicare, you're likely to stay at Multicare. And the other piece of this is we've got folks who work in hospitals who want to move up. You know, someone, for example, who works in food services or housekeeping is dedicated to working in the hospital and wants to get more on the clinical side. Those are great people to be getting as fast as we can through the pipeline.
Yeah, that's great. Kirk Green has a question. He says, he shares a thought that it appears that both sides of the aisle in Congress agree on the need to change immigration laws. Is your organization lobbying U.S. Congress?
Yes. Hi, Kirk Green, by the way. We work with Kirk. Yes, we are. The American Hospital Association takes the lead on this issue as a federal issue of federal policy, but we are working with our own delegation, who tends to be quite supportive. Actually, our delegation has good supporters of hospitals and interested in increasing the number of folks who can work in our country.
That's great. Jean shares a thought, and I want to hear your thoughts on this. It may be the last question that we have. Better pay equity for Medicaid paid in-home care assistance would speed up discharge rates and get people home much more quickly. What are your thoughts on that, with family units kind of spreading out across the U.S., and while a Medicaid in-home care person may be there, they may not have family near to help supplement times where there's not an in-home care assistant?
Yeah, that's part of what I was talking about increasing the post-acute care payment rates. And this really is an issue. We've got more and more folks who don't have family with them. We have also more people who do what we call curbside discharge, which is the family is around, but they haven't really been very involved. And the nurse needs to be able to go to the car to give the instructions to the family as they're taking their person home. So our communal increasing isolation is exacerbating the problems with hospital discharge for sure. And home care is a really valuable option. My dad has Parkinson's and dementia. He gets home care. We've gone back and forth about whether or not he should be in a nursing home. It's really lovely to be able to keep him at home. It's really helpful for him. And so I think more people who can live at home and can get the support they need to stay at home it's usually great for them, and it's great for their families.
Absolutely. Well, Cassie, I really appreciate this. This was wonderful for me. We're getting a lot of great feedback in the chat too. I think everybody has found this to be incredibly valuable. And some great takeaways on things that we can be thinking and talking about in the community that we may not think about on a regular basis if we take our health for granted, like I think many of us do. And I just want to thank you for that. And we will be handing this back over to President.
And we'd love your support as we go through the legislature. And if there's a way for us to communicate again with you all about how our various policy proposals are advancing, please let us know, because we would love to have folks. There's lots of opportunities that are low barrier about sending a quick email to your legislators that we can help you with, or signing in opposed or in favor of a bill to help really shore up the healthcare system. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Cassie.
All right, thank you, Cassie. That was fantastic. And thank you for all of the great questions from our Rotarians. And Jen, especially, thank you for moderating those questions. Cassie, in recognition of your generosity of time to participate in Rotary today, Seattle 4 has contributed to Harvest Against Hunger, which provides healthy meal components to food banks. And 600 servings of healthy produce have been given in your name. I'd like to also thank our gold sponsors, Liz Powell with Remax on Market, and also our longstanding partner, Bob Alexander. We're grateful to both of them. Now, speaking of Harvest Against Hunger, club member David Bobanek is going to share a recap of our recent Hunger Strikes fundraiser. David, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, President Beth. Good afternoon, everybody. So last week, at last week's meeting, I made an announcement about the hunger strike, and the results are in. Actually, the results are still coming in, because you can still make donations to support your favorite team through the end of today. But more than $70,000 has been raised for local hunger relief efforts through the hunger strike. And a large portion of that will go to neighborhood hunger relief organizations that Rotary Club's partnered with. But I am here to say thank you to the Seattle 4 team captains and the teams. And so, starting with President Beth and the Bowling Stones, who I think won an award for the most introverted team. Wait, what? Oh, no, sorry, most extroverted team participating in the hunger strike this year. Beth Knox was a captain. Jen Gladish was all on the team, as well as Jeff and, of course, Ken Grant. And a special shout out to Jen Gladish, because she was responsible for a $6,000 grant from First Interstate Bank to help support the hunger strike. So Jen, thank you so much for making that happen. Next up, the Wright team. Mark Wright was a team captain with Tiffany and Tom Lewis, Chris Schultz, and Linda Lowry. They took the best picture, but the fun fact of this is that apparently Mark Wright broke his bowling ball during the hunger strike. I've never heard of that, but it happened. Mark thinks it's a great thing because he gets to get a new bowling ball. But anyway, ask Mark about how that went down. And the next group was thanks to Kathy Gibson, who captained the Seattle Rotary Rollers. We were over in a very old school West Seattle Roxbury bowling lane. Sten Chrissy, Linda Rao, who had a replacement bowler for her, but she showed up anyway. Nicole Klein brought family, and I was there as well. I'm happy to report that I found out now that it doesn't matter which hand I bowl with. I'm terrible at both, because I bowled an 87 right-handed, and then the next game I bowled an 87 left-handed. So I'm, as the great Shaquille O'Neal would say, I'm amphibious. Okay. Next slide. So we raised all that money, and it was terrific. But I want to remind everybody about why it's so important to support hunger relief efforts across the community. And we just heard about the impacts on staffing through the hospitals over the past 2.5 years of the pandemic, and we've seen similar, really challenging times in the hunger relief system. One of the bright spots coming out of the pandemic was that we saw a number of new programs, community-based programs, and this is a picture of a student food bank operation that popped up in one of the South Seattle college locations. And you know, the work that Harvest Against Hunger and all of our community partners do, really focusing on providing fresh, healthy, nutritious produce to those people who are at a point of crisis in their lives, to get some additional help, to have access to good, nutritious food, to hopefully maintain their health, particularly at this time of year, is critically important, and it costs money. And so the money that was raised during the hunger strike is really going to help to support all of these efforts that are taking place in neighborhoods across our community this afternoon. So thank you to everybody that participated in the hunger strike. If you'd like to donate to one of those teams, whatever the cost of a new bowling ball is, perhaps to Mark's team, you can do so by clicking on the link. I think Mary is going to drop a link to the hunger strike website. We'll take donations through the end of the day, or through the end of today. Just make sure that you note that you're making a donation on behalf of one of the Seattle 4 teams when you do that. And then finally, just a quick save the date notification for our Hearts and Wine event. And many of you have been to it in the past. We are really happy to say that we're going to have an in-person Hearts and Wine event again this year. The save the date of February 24th at the Foundry in Seattle, which is where it's been previously. We look forward to seeing many of you there, and there will be details on that available in the next 2 weeks. So thank you so much for the time, and thank you all for your great work in supporting the hunger strike and Harvest Against Hunger.
All right, thank you, David. That was a great report, and very inspiring to see how our fundraising is impacting our local community through Harvest Against Hunger. So next up, we have club member and Seattle Rotary Service Foundation campaign chair, John Bridge, to give us an update on our campaign progress. John.
Thank you, President Beth. I want to thank everybody who's already made their donation to the Seattle Rotary Foundation this year. Just to remind everyone that our young leaders are supposed to be giving, we hope, at least $150, regular members $400 a year, and for Pinkham and Skeels, it's $1,000. And the President's Circle, and I've gotten some great response from our President's Circle, they give at least $2,500 or more annually to the Seattle Rotary Foundation. This year, we have, as you probably have heard, a goal of $250,000 to raise, and we have raised just about a little over a quarter of that right now. And so I'm hoping that all of us will get down and make sure that we have donated before the end of the year. You know, we're down to 325 members right now, so hopefully everybody will participate. You know, it's really easy to donate. I dropped into the chat, and Mary did also. So we've got 2 places in the chat where it's been shown how we go about donating, just on our website, and it's under this Service Foundation where it says make a donation, or you can just link it right now from the chat. You can also give on a monthly basis by determining how much you want to give each month. And that's a lot easier to do than a whole lot all at once. So consider that. And for those of you that may not want to give before the end of the year, and you might want to avoid having me or someone else from the foundation call and bug you, if you plan on pledging, let us know. Drop a line to me, or fill out the form that is on the Rotary website for donations, and put a check mark by the other in that form and say that you are going to be pledging before the end of January. Now, all of this money is really important for all of the committee work that we have been talking about over and over again, all the good things that our Rotary Club does for our community and the world. So please, please donate, and donate now so that we can plan appropriately for the year to come. And just to give a little plug for David Bodanek and the Rotary Foundation, our International Rotary Foundation, you can also go on that website and donate to that. And we hope everybody will donate to that. In addition, it's a separate donation, and that's important for our matching grants. So please, 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 again, donate, and thanks for the time.
John, thank you so much for your leadership and on this campaign, and really for all of the members supporting the Rotary Service Foundation. Aligns so perfectly with Service Above Self, our mission for Rotary in Seattle 4. So please do that as soon as possible and avoid getting that call from John. Okay, so we're going to have our Jen Gladish come back up because our Prince of Programs, Ken Grant, is traveling today. So Jen is going to share who we have coming up for speakers in the next month. Jen.
Thank you so much. And a quick note to the donations you can give to Harvest Against Hunger and to the link that Mary dropped in there for John. I shared with somebody the other day that it's a really great time to supplement our vitamin D with charitable giving. We always lack that here. So on December 7th, we will be at the Westin. We will have Mike Hatzenbeller, President and CEO, and Emily Cantrell, COO of Provel. They are a Seattle-based nonprofit that believes every one of us should have the right and the ability to pursue the life we choose to live. They've spent 80 years fighting the stigma around disabilities. Please join us while they present how their company is working to build pathways to societal inclusion for all individuals. It'll be a great program. Then on December 14th, we will be at the Westin. This is going to be a very big turnout. So if you would like to bring a guest, please let Mary know as soon as possible. We would love to have as many people as we can, but proper planning will make sure we all get a hot plate of food. This will be our last meeting of 2022. We will have a short program with Jonathan Harvey of the Salvation Army, followed by our long program with Mayor Bruce Harrell. And then December 21st is our holiday party. I think that Mary's going to drop that link actually into the chat box again. Please sign up as soon as you can. It's going to be an absolutely great time. Our annual holiday party is going to be a great place for us to say our goodbyes to 2022 and hopefully get into a wonderful 2023. We'll resume in the year 2023 on January 4th at the Westin. And I will turn it back over to President Beth for our closing remarks and our updates.
All right. Thank you, Jen. I do hope that everyone joins us for the December 21st holiday party. We've got a great lineup of entertainment, and it'll just be great to connect with one another and celebrate the holidays. So as we wrap up, I wanted to share just a brief update on our club member, John Steckler, who many of you know is continuing his recovery from back surgery. I spoke with John yesterday, and he sounds so much better than the last time we chatted. And he said that while the recovery has been far more challenging than he originally anticipated, he's finally coming out of what he called the 3-week hell. And is coming out of the worst of it. So his goal is to join us in mid-December, and hopefully we'll be at the holiday party on the 21st. And I also wanted to recognize club member and nominations chair Jan Levy and her committee for their work in establishing a candidate list for board and leadership positions for the 2023-2024 year. And meanwhile, President-elect Nancy Cahill is putting together her team of committee vice presidents. So just a reminder that if there is anyone who is interested in one of these leadership opportunities, please contact Jan or Nancy or Mary and one of us, and we can get you connected. So as always, we'll wrap up our meeting with a quick recap of Seattle sports. Now the Pac-12 season has concluded, and it wrapped up in our state with a very exciting Apple Cup last Saturday. In a 51-33 win over Washington State, the Huskies avenged last season's defeat while also securing their first 10-win season since 2018. Now that Apple Cup win means that a Rose Bowl appearance is still in play. And that win also most certainly inspired Director of Athletics Jen Cohen to offer Coach DeBoer a 2-year extension, which is especially meaningful for a first-year coach. Now, Washington State, according to most outlets, looks to be headed to Los Angeles Bowl on December 17th with Boise State as the most likely opponent. So stay tuned for final decisions on bowl games in the coming weeks. The Seahawks are in second place in the NFC West after a really disappointing loss to the Raiders last Sunday. So they'll be seeking redemption this Sunday against the LA Rams. Kraken remain in second place in the Pacific Division after a 3-game win streak. And the Mariners are in what's called a hot stove time during the offseason when free agent signings and trades are most prevalent. The M's baseball operations team is very active right now, and the roster has probably changed in the time that it took me to report this. So we're not going to go into details at this point. Now, the Sounders are also in their offseason. Their president of soccer, Garth Lagerwey, is leaving to run the Atlanta club. And today it was announced that Craig Wabel will take his place. Now, Craig played soccer for University of Washington and later for the Sounders. And his career took him to the University of Michigan and Real Salt Lake. So it's great to have this hometown guy back leading our club. The 2022 World Cup is well underway. The U.S. men's team tied with England. And then yesterday I scored against Iran to win that match. It was 1-0. And now they go on to play against the Netherlands. That's an early game for us. Saturday at 6:30 a.m. is when we'll be able to watch that. Now, in regards to that U.S.-England matchup, I'll leave you with this quote that was seen on Twitter. Never forget that England blew a 13 colony league. So with that, I will leave you all. Have a great rest of your week. I hope that you can stay dry and warm in this crazy weather we're having. Okay, have a good week, everyone.